All right. So one thing I've been thinking a lot about lately is that there's this quest for the latest tactic, the latest hack, the latest thing to do, put something else on the to-do list. But maybe we got to take a step back and think about the big picture, the strategy, the why behind things. And so I thought it would be good to bring on my good friend here, Joel Bauer. So Joel from Owning the Edge, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, and I should say welcome back because
Yeah.
you were on the first few months that I had a podcast. It was right around the time we had Brand Accelerator live in
Yeah.
2019, which a lot's happened in the world
It
since then.
has. It's almost surreal looking back at how everything was running at this point versus now. Like things just got so topsy-turvy.
Yes, yes, but I think the shining lights or whatever that's come out of all that, or the bright
Yeah.
spot, whatever you want to say, really is that it's given us all a lot of chance to think about things.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it is good when the world goes awry because it shakes things up a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe we don't like the shaking of the stuff up in the world, or we do like it or don't like it, wherever the case is, but it does give us a chance to reflect somewhat. And I
Yeah.
think we've all had a lot of chance to reflect the last few years.
That reminds me, like when the pandemic first hit, I was listening to Peter Diamandis, and he was talking about
Okay. Yeah.
the transformation. I don't know if you guys don't know who he is. He's the kind of the futurist. He's always like looking at
Yes.
where the tech is going. And
Mhm.
so he was looking at us and he's like, you know what I think is actually going to happen? I think this is kind of forces us to jump forward. And
Mm.
he's like, because we are still so caught in going to work and going to the building and,
Mhm.
having these offices and these, even the entrepreneurs, like their dream was, even if they couldn't afford it, that someday they'd afford it and then shove a bunch of people in it,
Mhm.
and he was saying like, no, this is the new economy. This opens up the world to all of these accesses that's where we're headed. It jumped it. And so
Mm.
I always held that, like while we were going through the whole thing, I just, because it helped. More talented people came out into the marketplace willing to work virtually with any entrepreneur. And they were just looking for an opportunity to kind of get a more of what they got a taste of. Like, oh man, I can
Mhm.
actually be here with my family. And like, yeah, I actually can work. I can just shut this door and work. And
Mhm.
so then it just opened up where suddenly talent that you never would have been able to grab as entrepreneurs was like available. And I thought that was
Mm.
really cool. And now it's just like normal. It's normal to have someone who you only work through Zoom. You might not even meet them in person for years. And it's crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the internet e-commerce space, we've kind of had that somewhat location independent, although I wouldn't say I'm very location independent, but but the
But
world
at
has
the
been,
warehouse and
well,
getting it to
exactly. Like
Amazon.
I've got a
Yeah.
warehouse in the back here and like, that type of thing. Whereas, there is some holding us down, but at the same time too, I know that I can work with someone in the other side of the world on a project or whatever the
Yeah.
case is. And so I think the rest of the world has kind of woken up to that, where
Yeah.
whether there is some location independence for some tasks or just the business itself can be location independent. And so I think that has opened it up for even bigger businesses that you wouldn't have thought are now all of a sudden on the train of everybody works from home because now we don't have to pay as much money in furniture and commercial
Yeah,
rental space.
that
So
does help.
yeah, so that has opened up a lot. So well, let's just take a quick little reminder for folks. Joel, just who are you, and um, what's your background in this business?
So I have been a serial entrepreneur for going on 20, I think almost 26 years. I got
Oh
my
wow.
start when I was 16. I absolutely just loved the concepts of building my own life.
Hmm.
And it seemed like at the time I was listening to, my parents were actually listening to Tony Robbins, and
Okay, got it.
it was going in. And so I was sitting there
Mhm.
like, instead of thinking, oh, I can't wait to go to high school, get into a good college, and then find out what I was already planning this. Well, what would I do with the rest of my life? And building a
Mm.
business was on that list for sure. And as I started getting excited, I didn't know that that was a weird thing. Like, I mean, I started telling people about it, and like my family started to get worried for me because it's like, well, that's not a secure path, and like all kinds of stuff. And so I learned right around that age, as I started getting really excited and telling everybody not to say anything, and not to really like mention it as like this offhand thing, but not a big deal. And I was about is when I went to college, I finally found other like-minded people.
Mm,
Either like older people connected through friends of mine, or actually more entrepreneurial spirit people who like were raised by entrepreneurs,
mhm.
and I just had such a massive love for entrepreneurs. Like it was just like I found my people. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm not crazy and alone, and and I was so excited about everything on how marketing worked and how sales worked and how business works, that and I was so excited about entrepreneurs that it was like I would talk to entrepreneurs, and then if they had any like things that I could help them with, I would like jump in. And if I couldn't, I'd go like learn. I'd go grab a training course. I'd go read on how to write sales scripts, and I would do anything I could to help an entrepreneur. And that has been consistently my life for the last 20 plus years. And so now today we've been, me and my partners have been attached on marketing for companies where we come in and actually act as their entire marketing department and build up their marketing team while actually carrying out whatever's needed to make it work. So we weren't just like, we're just going to do your logo and website and then you worry about the rest. We would just, whatever it took, we became partners in that in many ways. And so
Mm,
that's just kept growing and leading to more and more consulting gigs. And um, finally, we're just looking at a place where the a lot of the partnerships that we have, like the companies we came and attached on, they're just growing. They're just taking off. And we want to figure out how to get what we've been doing for people more direct, like in these bigger companies, to more entrepreneurs. And so we're right in the
mm,
transition. The Owning the Edge brand actually spraying out of the desire to help entrepreneurs actually push that edge and stop feeling like they have to run back for safety, and actually go after what they really want and what they deserve, regardless of the pressures or what everybody's telling you you're supposed to do. And so that's been our whole journey. And so right now we're really helping entrepreneurs to kind of stop being operators alone, like, and
mhm,
start being the real owner, like how to get the business to be a benefit to your life, not just something you always feed.
mm,
And it's weird how many people don't ever really cross that line as entrepreneurs. They're there barely getting by, and at no point, like, they're I don't know, sacrificing other things like their health and their relationships, because now this machine needs them to like be there, and it's like demanding all their time. And I don't know, I saw that so often that we wanted to find another path. We wanted to show them that it's not a joke to ask for a lifestyle you want. It's not weird to want different numbers than what the industry is telling you you're supposed to want. You just
mm,
have to figure out what actually works for your life. And that can be huge. I mean, that can be massive numbers. And a lot of the people we work with, that's what they actually wanted permission to work more, but not ruin their life. And so that we worked out programs where they could add value without adding lots of time to the other areas of
mm.
their life. And so, yeah.
Okay, so that's a lot to unpack there. So I mean, 26 years.
Yeah.
Um, as I mentioned before, Brand Accelerator Live, an event we were both connected to in 2019. You did a good job emceeing that, and we worked together on the planning of that and the execution of it. Um, and I know that there's some people that were at that event that you're doing consulting for, if that's the
Yeah.
right word, now. Um, and so you've gotten to see, it sounds like a very wide range of entrepreneurs, not just people in the Amazon
Yes.
e-commerce world, but also just in general. And
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about, because you start seeing things like when you're in the arena. Like, I think one of my favorite quotes is that Teddy Roosevelt quote of, it's kind of a long quote, so it's hard to quote, but it's basically about he says the man in the arena, which could be a man or a woman, because this is like 1900 that he probably said it.
Yeah.
But basically about the man in the arena versus the critic,
Yeah.
that once you're kind of in the arena, you see things differently, in essence, that you
Yeah.
take that risk of defeat in the pursuit of victory. And now that when you're kind of in that arena and you can see that, you see there is that push pull of you're trying both to go after victory but to not be defeated. And I think sometimes it can be hard to make that jump towards the next victory.
Yeah.
If I'm making any sense here, feel
I
free
think
to
so.
jump in.
Yeah, I
And
mean
maybe that's what I'm trying to say is sometimes people do get bogged down in the owner operator and becoming less of the operator and more of the owner. And I've
yeah.
struggled with this over the years myself too. At times, sometimes I feel like I'm doing better, and sometimes I feel like I'm sliding back and kind of back and forth, hopefully in the right direction. But it is something that's kind of hard to get yourself out of the operator, because I think especially going a little bit of a tangent in the Amazon e-commerce world, so many people start off listening to podcasts and figuring everything out on their own, and they
Yeah.
get to a certain level where they could start divvying things up, creating more systems, but so much of it is just stuck in their head, and
Yeah.
they're afraid of the defeat if they start letting go of things. Does that make more sense now?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, e-commerce, it does happen a lot because yeah, you're following these like step-by-step guides, how to
Mm-hmm.
get your stuff sourced, how to put it up on FBA, how
Mm-hmm.
to create your own Shopify site. Any
Mm-hmm.
problem, you Google search and then you watch a
Exactly.
step-by-step thing. And when you are the owner and the operator, and you're the only person in your entire
Right.
team, who else is going to do that? So it's not just, we kind of don't even realize that we're learning how to do it, but then we're also doing everything and we don't know how to
Yes.
detach that. So it's like our world is like a problem we learn and implement. And so all the knowledge, all the stuff we know immediately gets applied to it.
Mm-hmm.
We're not like trying to translate through what we're thinking and what we've seen so far to an employee and wondering why they're messing it up. But we don't always see that gap. So we always expect, like, we hire someone like, well, I do this. Well, yeah, you do it. But how much experience do you have? And it's your business. Like, so
Right.
you think about it differently. And so it becomes a very scary jump because what has been working
Mm-hmm.
isn't going to take you to that next level. But it's so, like, when you're talking about the victory or the win, it's like, if humans are just conditioned so easily and we don't even realize it, but you follow the sheet, the step by steps, and it
Mm.
works. And then you go, and then you find another problem and you do the step by step and it works and you get hooked. And you're like, okay,
Mm.
cool. Where's my next 7
The
steps?
problem solving. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a
And
puzzle almost.
well, it's the way they solve it. It's through finding someone else's instructions step by step because they're so tactical. And at first, it gets you a lot of results because you need everything.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, you have massively increasing complexity, millions of things that you could possibly do.
Mm.
And you have to now actually use strategy, think, where are you going uniquely to everybody else? And then you have to look at the tactics and say, is this my next step? Is this what I need? Is this person actually on the same path I am? Are they thinking about business completely different? Or
Mm.
are they going to actually lead me? So it's like I start watching, like when I made this transition myself, I just started watching not only what the person that was telling me to do, like I believed that it was good. I also looked at their life and I was
Mm.
like, oh, well, what's their lifestyle like? Is that what I want? And if it was a nightmare compared to what I wanted, I was like, okay, cool. Maybe I need to find another guy,
Wow.
and find some other trainer that would fit for me. But that taking yourself out and kind of being the owner, as what we call it, and the strategist of where's this thing headed, that's a scary jump because it isn't, I have a problem, I look it up, I follow the steps, it fixes it. And there almost becomes this reliant where we keep trying to do that, trying to fix the next problem. But the next problem is actually, what do you want your business to really look like? Do you want to own a warehouse? Do you need to find a third party that can do that? Do you
Mm-hmm.
want to be in a physical office? Do you want to be remote? These are all personal choices. And so you go through, and like we were finding, like when we were hiring at first, we had this vision we didn't even know we had. We wanted amazing people to come and like be excited to work with us. And then we picked up one of the first people we trained with for hiring VAs. They were like, oh, it was kind of like everybody was like, I don't know, just robots. It was like, just make sure they do this and then force them to do it and like do time clocks. And I was just like, that's not what I want. Some people like
Mm.
that. Like they like that certainty that the person is delivering and they can see the exact numbers, hour by hour. And I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
want nothing to do with that because I don't want to check those numbers. So it became
Mm.
this thing where it's like we kept following the path and then we kept finding the hires weren't working because the way he hired and what he wanted to see in them didn't ever test for what we wanted. So we had to change the process significantly so that we could have real members of our team because I don't know. I work a lot, and then the people I spend the most time with are the people on my team. So
Mm-hmm.
I want them to be awesome, and I want to enjoy them, and I want them to win. I want them to feel like they're growing, and so it's just things like that where you have to take a step back and like his steps worked, and we hired for his program, but we didn't hire for the business we wanted. So and that's all the way through, like like all the what marketing software you use. If you hire an agency or you bring someone in house, it's like constantly there's just little shift that you actually have infinite choices and you have to pick, and then you have to go find the tactics that fit that strategy rather than just the first tactic that gets thrown at you.
Yeah, and so that's a good point. So one thing to unpack there is, and I know this is going to kind of sound like a tactical question,
Yeah.
but how do you make that shift? And I think this is where it starts to be that push pull of what got you here won't get you there. What got you out of
Absolutely.
Egypt won't get you to the promised land necessarily.
Yeah.
So how do you how do you get to that promised land of, okay, now I start hiring people or whatever the case is, but how do you end up so you're not just in this cycle of
So it
creating
is
fires to put out?
it is a really challenging jump, and it's because it's for us, it's the owner switch, and somebody has to decide what the future is going to look like, and whether you believe it or not, whether it seemed like, oh, I was just following this person's instructions and it worked. You were creating something out of nothing. You were taking the chaos that is the world, and you're saying, I'm going to create a business that creates these things and then sells to these people that want them. And
Mm-hmm.
it's every business is unique, and it's usually dictated by the owner. And
Mm.
so there's just this path where it's like, well, yeah, you don't know for sure. And that's what's so cool about the steps is like, the certainty's there. You have to at a certain point be the leader and say, no, this is where we're going. And
Mm-hmm.
you have to start working on it. Even if you're wrong, you have to start pointing in some direction and then working against that. Because if you just leave it open, then yeah, you're distracted by everything. It's like everybody's new program. The latest thing on how to run Facebook ads is like out, and I should be on Google Store and I should be doing my own Shopify site and then feeding it with a funnel. And you're like, you just get lost because without knowing where you're headed, even guessing the best you can with where you're at, you can't pick right. So you just choose everything or you think you're always behind. And the truth is, you just need to make steps towards a thing. And a lot of it's so scary about it is often you don't know if it's the right thing until you start moving in that path. Until you say,
Mm.
I'm going to have a business, like I want to build my team. And like you start going down that path and you start realizing, like maybe your first vision was you were going to get a small office and you're going to shove a bunch of people in there. And you're like, okay, but now I don't have any freedom. I'm here. I have to show up every day, or they don't do their work. And then you have to like ask yourself, what do you need to change? What do you want different in the vision? What do you need to do to get on track? But you wouldn't have known that until you did it. It's just like you don't even know that you have some of these assumptions. So it is an iterative process, and that's why it's so, in some cases very scary because it's not so certain. But it is over time, it's the real thing. It's a thing where you wake up and you don't have a business you hate. And that's what so many entrepreneurs do is like they build and they build and build and like, I'm just going to hustle. And eventually it's supposed to be this like magical thing opens up and the world is great and it feeds their life and their family's happy. And,
Mm.
and no, the business you're building is the business you're going to have. If you are tactically trying to build a different business that allows for freedom or allows for choice or allows for you to put trust into your team, if you aren't on that path because you decided to, it doesn't show up magically later.
That's such a good point that it doesn't just show up. Okay, so this is where people start making the shift. I get be honest. One of my challenges, I think, is that in a lot of things, I've gotten a good job hiring people and hiring people to do some tasks here and there, but I end up being the bottleneck in a lot of
Yep.
things. Like they're looking to me for things to do, or even if I'm creating processes, sometimes they don't quite happen automatically, and it's probably more my fault than their fault. It's not that they're not doing a good job or don't want to do a good job, but maybe
Yeah.
I haven't done a good enough job of, hey, here's just the sheet music, you just go do it, let me know if you have questions.
Well, that is an excellent point because that I do see a lot, and it's, I love that you even having the understanding that it might be you, because there is a gap, and it's not like,
Mm.
oh, you create a problem or you're a problem. It's just that when you go to hire someone, like at first you didn't have to have the skill of managing, inspiring, and creating a culture that allows people to want to do better and over deliver for your business and for you, and how to create a vision that's bigger than you just wanted a nice life, because you have real people now that are buying into this thing, and if they're not really bought in, yeah, you get the bare minimum in a lot of places. And so what's you like go, okay, I'm freaked out, I have too much to do, I can't do it all myself, I better hire. Then you grab that person, try to shove them in real fast, and then you don't realize all the skills you signed up for. You now have
Mm.
to have all those skills to make it work, and you don't. And so one of the things we do is, even before you're ready to hire, like hopefully as early as you can realize it, get someone that comes and works like a few hours a week. just someone that does maybe 2 tasks for you. So you can get the ability to like take what's going on in here
Mhm.
and give it to somebody when it's not dire, when it's not like my business is crumbling around me and I thought this was going to
Mm.
free me up. And now I'm managing and micromanaging and doing their work on top of it. And I still have to do all my stuff. And, so know that there is a bunch of skills when you start going down new paths. If you don't have that, you do have to bring it in somehow. Some people find partners and bring it in. Other people, you got to learn. For most entrepreneurs, we got to learn it because like resources are usually always capped because we're trying to grow and we're feeding back into the business or barely trying to survive. Like, and during that process, it's hard to go, okay, let me find a really talented person who can manage this for me. And so it's you. So
Right.
yeah, so you got to learn how to manage.
Well, and one of the interesting things is about being an entrepreneur manager versus being a work for a company manager is I find, having worked at some large companies with good cultures, it's one thing when like the culture kind of manages the people somewhat for you
Yeah.
in some of these large organizations. And so just because it's the Disney way of doing things, or it's the, fill in the blank company way of doing things, it just things somewhat happen where you don't have to be as intentional about the culture, because
Yeah.
if you try to go against the culture, it's going to backfire on you. So there's like this stream already happening. But when you're an
Yes.
entrepreneur manager, you
What do
are
you
the culture. So
So that's that is an added piece. It's a different level because again, you are creating something out of nothing, and people forget that all the time.
mhm.
You're basically creating a universe. Your business is
Mm.
its own little ecosystem. You are in control of it. And so what you do or design or how you think about it, that gets laid into it. So larger cultures, and like, I guess I wish I would have made us different definitions just carefully, because when you use the word culture, it always goes to like the bigger companies and what they've been building for years, and
Right.
I don't know, these little nuances that don't even make sense for an entrepreneur. So like break it down to super basic, when you are an entrepreneur, the culture is simply the standards by which people must behave.
Mm.
And
That's a
so
very simple way, but well stated
thank
way
you.
to think of it. Yeah.
So that what happens there, it's your ecosystem, it's your world. What do you want your employees to show up and do? You have to keep it simple enough. Like we try to aim for like 3 or 4 max, but they're like core tenets of
Mm.
how this or what you expect in this organization. So like one of ours is problem solving. Another is a deep passion for serving others, and so we're always looking, and growth oriented, so we look for those 3 and we actually train that in our hiring. We literally will do a culture test and make sure that they fit these things. Like we want stories of times that they've really been there to serve, or like, so we make sure that even in our process it's being mentioned often. And so then when they come in, it's not abnormal for me to finish up a meeting by rewarding the people who protected the culture or the standards that we live by,
Mhm.
and kind of mentioning how we're getting astray and then we need to correct. And so it just becomes very usable. And it also was interesting because I had an employee, and right when we were like getting very serious about building the culture actively and not making it like an accident,
Mm.
that happened. We had hired somebody on, and he came in, and I was doing training videos for other entrepreneurs as we were figuring stuff out. And for one of his assignments, he went and watched all these videos. Well, I didn't know he had. I didn't. It was connected to the social team, and he was trying to just get other access to what else are we teaching right now, what's most relevant. He's a front end sales, and so he
Mhm.
really wanted to understand the business. And I'm talking to him. I'm like, it's just amazing. I'm like, it's so great. You're perfect for this team. And he was even at the time, he was some of the things he was doing. It was not working. It wasn't difficult. And he was really stressed out. Like he was like worried that he was on the chopping block or something. And so I'm talking to him. I
Mm.
was like, no, you are a perfect fit for what I'm looking for. This is, I absolutely love how you commit to things. I love how you want to really learn and grow, and you want to take care of the people that we serve. And I'm going through all this, and he's like, oh, that's so awesome. He's like, yeah, it really helped because I found these videos where you told me what you wanted in an employee, and I just did those. And I was like,
Oh.
okay. So sometimes we make it too hard. We never tell them that we expect them to come to us with solutions rather than problems, or
Mhm.
to go that extra mile. If a client's on the line, don't just leave them hanging. they have to be told because they don't know what the culture is. And so they can either guess it as they go and hopefully get it, or miss it entirely. And so the simple thing of just making sure your team knows it was a huge jump, and that I follow it, because I mean, the first person that got checked when I started, like, oh my, these are our 3 principles, was, am I doing that right now? So, because I mean, I was a big part of my business and I still am. So I set the culture by my actions.
So that's such a good point about setting the culture with your actions, because sometimes things can just happen. And oftentimes, if they're just happening and things are just unfolding around you, chances are, even if you're happy with it initially, eventually it'll just kind of unfold in a direction you don't want to go.
Yeah.
So if you want to fold things in a certain direction, you got to be intentional about it. Now, what gets scary with people oftentimes is, what should that actually look like?
Yeah.
Even if they say, oh, this is kind of what I want, and then, like, there's this time where the rubber kind of has to hit the road, and it gets scary trying to figure out, where should the rubber hit the road. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is that path. It becomes from something where you can follow step-by-step instructions to, you have to take your best stab in the dark, and then you have to learn from that. And so it should be directed by you as the owner, as the leader. You should be thinking about this. And a lot of times entrepreneurs don't even have the space to think of really important things because they don't understand how valuable it is. So yes, it's really tough if you're not sitting down and, like, spending some time or talking to a trusted friend that you can bounce off those ideas and, get to a good place, with it, where you go, okay, yeah, that is what I want. Okay, yeah, you're right. If we did, we phrased it like this, or it was more like, this is what I'm really looking for, that would help. But you've got to commit to it and watch what you're getting. Because that's where it opens up. Like, if you want really next level, for your business, what happens is, at every level that you reach in your business, it gets thinner. How many people actually know what you're going through and what you're about to go through gets thinner and thinner and thinner until it doesn't exist. You are on your own unique path. Your business is unique. You have to, like, take other people's ideas and, like, dissect out what works for you, what actually makes sense in your business, and you have to bring it out. But at first, you don't have to do that. At first, it's like, just this general piece. Of course, I have to get my listing up. I have to write a listing. I have to get pictures. Okay, that's all easy. But when your business starts to grow, it gets less and less that someone else can give you those instructions, and more that you have to step up and create them, even if you don't know 100% yet. They talked about, like, leadership. It's not always about knowing the answers. Like, if you think you have to know the answers perfectly as a leader, you will fail as a leader. It's about making decisive action, like, that you move and then you correct as you need. You move and you pay attention and then you correct it. So if you set these 3 tenets, and it's like, well, the first tenet is, that family's the most important. And then you find out your employees are like, oh, well, yeah, my cousin has a baseball game, so I'm just not going to show up. You're like, oh, okay.
Right.
So how specifically?
Well, I just wanted to be there for him.
Yeah.
On social media and like the picture.
Or, like, we are, we want, if you build a culture where it's about being their buddy and their friend, and and then you get, like, okay, cool, well, I can get away with anything. Oh, it's no big deal, man, I'll get to it later. And you start realizing, well, you've got to start adding some other elements. And so that's why we worked on more of the problem solving and the massive desire to actually serve, because that's something we can actually see live and in effect, and doesn't tell people, I want to connect to people. I want to have a great time with them, but I want to share in a real result.
So what are some kind of those tenets, those cultural elements, maybe is the right phrase, that you see in, like, e-commerce, Amazon sellers that seem to work? And I know you've worked with quite a few, and some that I kind of know a little bit behind the scenes of their businesses. So what is working and what's not working
for the open culture?
Let's say open culture in general. They're just the culture term. What about culture for e-commerce is? I don't even know if desirable is the right word, because some of it is going to be owner dependent. Effective. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Because I mean, I'll try to give a bunch, so you kind of pick and choose, but play with them. It's your own unique. And so hardworking is a good one. Problem solver, solution oriented, where they actually come forward with solutions. It's not like, here, solve this problem, Kevin. That they are determined, they are growth oriented, that they treat people well. They treat people decently, no matter
Yeah,
who they.
the customers they interact with, suppliers,
You,
other,
the
yeah,
other client, yeah, other employees.
you as the owner,
Yeah.
other people. So yeah, you want all that.
um, that they do want to serve something bigger than themselves, even if they
Mm,
don't know what that is entirely. That there's
right.
like what we do here matters.
Hmm.
So other good ones. Um, Self starters. That's
Yep.
always great. And so if you look at it, what they're kind of like personality traits or character
Hmm.
traits rather than like skill traits. And I think that's where we get caught is like entrepreneurs do a lot of thinking like if I just get someone who can do the skill, then we'll all be fine. And
Yeah.
that's where culture goes to die because then you get a bunch of people that you can't actually corral and aren't working together. And oh, teamwork is a good one. Um, but so we always think it's like skills first because it's like, oh, I want to make sure they can do a really good job. I actually got to a point where if we go through the test of whatever it is and they nail the characteristics, they are self-starters, they are hungry, they are excited, they want to grow, they want to learn, and they do not fit the skills, I mark that as a person I got to find a hole for. Because if they
Mm,
nail the characteristics, I'm like, maybe it's not right now, but I will try to find a spot for that person because I know the culture can't be trained as easily as the skills.
right. So how do you identify the culture? Because everyone will tell you what you want to hear in an interview because they'll read your body language or whatever. And so
Eh, I think they're better than they are at
that's
it. It's
true. That's true.
I like it. It goes back to Elon Musk's one question. He asked them to describe like when you came across a large problem in your in your work and what did you do to overcome it. And if you listen to someone who's actually gone through real stuff and really cared and was in on the solution, they talk about it differently. They have just distinctions and little things that they noticed, and they add more of their emotions to it. So we ask a lot of like, tell us a time and elements like that, like what are your three favorite characteristics of a boss you've worked with before, or we
Mm,
ask them for things where they have to like dig in and analyze what basically the relationship is. And we also, without them knowing, like we ask like for problems with like other team members, or like how did you have a difficulty with a previous team member and what did you do to overcome it. And we're looking for little things that show basically whatever they talk about any team member for is how they're going to think about the current team members.
right.
So if they're very blame oriented, or how they talk about the boss is how they're going to talk about you, whether you know it or not. They're kind of telling that they'll, if they make a bunch of excuses and say, oh, that person was an idiot, they never gave me any clear direction, they were so stupid, and they're like, okay. Or the teammates, I just wish they had the talent and the skill. They came in and they were lazy, and like that's revealing so much about that person, of how they see the world and how they interpret everything and how
Hmm.
they're going to treat people. So if it was, if you hear on the other side, if like maybe they did have a difficult time with their boss and it was, but they'll talk about it differently if they have, for us, the care level or the characteristics to actually be part of our team. And they'll say things like, yeah, it was really tough. I don't think we always saw eye to eye. I was trying to figure out this. And, that's a person who's reasonable. And that's a person that, even in that situation, even telling us a story, is kind of like telling us that they will go to work of trying to figure out and
Hmm.
what was going on and what the differences were. And that's someone we can work with. And so over time, that's that it still is not always 100% in the interviews. That
Right.
has to be proven in their actions, but we find that that's easier and easier to notice as you look for it, especially when you have your tenants.
Mm,
And what, if you're clear on what they are, then it's really easy just to have someone talk and tell stories and why do you think you'd be great for this position, and all this stuff just kind of comes out. It's like, oh, that's kind of like connected to this. Oh, I
hmm.
don't know if they'll fit that. Okay, let's see. And then you just kind of test it. But if you have nothing, yeah, you don't know. It's like, I liked him. He was good. Okay.
Right, exactly. It's not just they seem nice. You
Yeah.
got to dig a little deeper than that. And
Yeah.
as you interview more people and hire more people over the years, you start finding your hot buttons a little bit
Yeah.
more, I find.
Yeah. You'll get your red flags for sure.
Right. But some of that you have to touch the stove to know not to touch it, when
Yeah.
it's hot.
Well,
Um,
so we do a lot to cover that. We hire, um, during the hiring process, we will actually literally give them the job, the main job that we need them to do. We will give them tasks to prove that they can do the job with whatever resources they're going to normally get. We create like specialized projects. We give them the resources they would get if they were working for us, and we kind of set 2 or 3 projects where they have to literally do it before they even get a chance of being hired.
Mm.
And we do pay them.
Mhm.
We respect their time. So we kind of narrow down the applicants from the pool, and then we give them that test, and then we get to see how they actually work. Like, even, you know, and we don't have to make it perfect. It's actually better when we don't, because then we see who actually asks questions, or who's like, I think I was missing this. Do you think I can get that? Or,
Mm.
I filled in myself because, I just wanted to get this in time. And like, you start to see how they actually work. And we always like, that's always a really awesome place. And then everybody's also hired on a temporary basis. There's an evaluation period, and it's for both of us. I want to make sure you're a fit here, both ways. I want to make sure you enjoy being here and that
Mhm.
you actually fit the culture of the day. Because if you don't, it won't work over time, and we know that. So we usually do about 3 months.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So you do about a 90-day
Yeah.
period. Okay.
Well, and it
Now,
keeps it actually tells us to be paying attention to that there might not be a fit, because usually you get in and you're like, you hired someone and 3 months later you're like, oh, it's not a fit. And then you go, oh my, I'm going to fire this person. And you feel horrible. And you're like,
mm,
because you didn't prep yourself for it emotionally. You're like, maybe they'll be better. And then you like drag it out, and it just gets worse and worse. And in the 3 month mark, you have to make that call. You're going to have to sit down and you're going to interview them. You might give them a raise if they did excellent, but at that 90 days, if it's not working, you got to let them go. And
right.
telling you ahead of time that that's happening is very helpful.
Right. 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 Yeah. So, because sometimes we do hold on to whatever in our lives longer than we need to.
Yeah.
Um, so what would you suggest then once you've got them and they're up and running, for someone just to make sure they're not the bottleneck on everything, that you've created the self-starter, you've got the hard worker, whatever it is that your tenants, that stuff's getting done and you're not going in and double checking the exact moment they clocked in and everything like you were
Yeah.
alluding to earlier.
So different jobs are a little bit different. Some we do have clocks, but I basically have them report their numbers so they hold true to their numbers, and they can see if it flounders, it changes. But I
Hmm.
don't check it. I don't monitor. I'm not like, oh, you're 30 minutes shy. Like, I
Right.
don't. Other jobs where it's clearly task, like it's performance based, like if there's actually an outcome, we just use a verification, like we just use a normal check system, like where I would naturally come in, or one of my, my managers would come in and just evaluate the quality of the work. We just use that to know that they got the job done or not. If
Hmm.
they're missing that mark, then they don't have anything. It's, so it's really task by task, and you have to kind of think about it. Is there a deliverable, or is a measurable that they can report on, so you at least get a feel? Because I do not want to micromanage. That's like, I did that for a long time, and I started noticing my life was worse and not better every time I hired. So
Hmm.
that wasn't the point. So we start looking at it. So like I guess I'll give some live examples. So one of our people actually does outbound sales, and so what we do is we have them just create tallies every day. How many people are they reaching out to? They also flag important conversations they may want us to look at for feedback. So I know how many calls they say they did. I know how many he measured if they turn into good conversations. He puts that many, how many marks, and then I'm seeing some of them, so I can actually see the quality. And if those numbers come down, like in one day, I don't care. 2 days, I start like, okay, I should probably call a meeting. Okay, 3 days, he's down. Why is he down? And so then I go in, and my thing isn't to go, okay, I'm going to solve this for you, which is what we all do. Or we're such problem solvers. Are like, I'm going to solve it. This is not acceptable. I'm going to make him do this. I just get in there like, so the numbers are down, and I'm seeing also the performance falls, because it makes sense. You're not loading in many people in, and you're why is this happening, and what can we do to fix it? And so now it's their job to fix their numbers, not mine. And if it becomes a consistent problem, yeah, then I have to like, this is serious. At this point, you're gonna like, it's been a month and you're consistently down almost every day. This is a problem. Like, going forward, we might not be able to go forward. So what do you suggest? And I allow people to be part of even the solution for their own work, because eventually that's what you have to do, is you have to get them looking at their numbers going, oh crap, I'm off. I better do something. That's what you want, because you want that built into them, and it also makes them feel better. You think, there's so much, if you hire right, if the culture is right and you have the right person, they're not trying to get away with as little as possible. It's actually amazing how many corporations actually just create a culture where that is like, duck your head low enough and do nothing, and let's see how little I can do in a week. And that's like, nobody knows. But in a small organization like an entrepreneur's business, in many cases, like early on, especially, you know what's going on and what's not going on. So I want that. I do want them invested in what are their numbers, what are their markers, and they feel great because then they know when they're winning and when they're not. Versus like, well, just keep working, just keep doing more, do more. If you did more, we'd have more. Like that doesn't help. They don't know when they've won. They don't know when to celebrate themselves. They don't know when to be proud. And so we like to have them track their numbers, and we help set them. We set what are the KPIs for this job or for this role. If they're doing graphic works for us or they're doing social, how many posts and how many pictures are they doing, and other things. And not always that simple. Sometimes it's project based. So you have people that are like our social media managers. It's other than like what's going on in social for those numbers, but that's not as direct as like what did she do today. So we just it is very different for a large, and this is where I know it like gets crazy complex and the possibilities become endless. But if you come in as owner and you're trying to head to a direction, and if like so one thing we did is we had somebody come in and they were like, oh, you got to track everything. There was like an ops manager and they were like, oh, we have to track everything to the nth degree and we have to do daily reports. And it's like after like 2 weeks of reading daily reports, I wanted nothing to do with daily reports. So for my world, and so I that's not what I want in my business. I want grown-ups. I don't want people that have to be babysat. That's very important to me. Because I also don't want them to feel like they're children. That's a shitty feel to come back and spend that much of your life in a place and feel like you're not that important or you don't actually have an impact.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. So let's close on any other kind of choosing your KPIs, any other just big picture strategy type of thoughts for folks.
I think the cleanest thing that kind of makes this clear is something we mentioned early. And it's you have to spend some time thinking about what do you want your business to look like. And you have to be willing to say crap you don't know is going to be 100% true. You have to like write down. It's like, well, my team would be able to manage themselves and I'd be able to take a month off. There's entrepreneurs right now doing that. And a lot of entrepreneurs, when I say that to them, they go, that's impossible. It's like, no, it's not. So write down what you really want. It doesn't mean that you have to have it the day or you're a failure. So literally write it down, write out the details. Even like, oh man, I like every meeting I have with my team, I feel like more excited about my business. Write that down. That's what you want. I want to be able to massively scale where just like my ideas about new products is instantly launched. And I don't do anything until the product is like done and it's like already ready to ship. And, like whatever those things are, write them down. Maybe they're 10 years out. Maybe they're 20 years out. You don't know, but write them down so that when new marketers come and say, oh, this is the greatest thing. It's the only thing that's going to make your business different. You go, wait, is that part of this? No, that's not part of it. No, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing because I have enough. Entrepreneurs have enough for most cases. If your business is cash flowing and consistently, I know you're working your butt off. Like you don't need 100 other things that are like looming over you. You need to know where you're going.
I need to do TikTok now.
Yeah, you do need to be on TikTok, but that's it. No. I mean, besides TikTok, everything else is optional.
Right.
But
I need to do Twitter now.
Yeah, if you don't want to be a social media mogul, then no, don't. If you want to be a business where you really are removed and they don't even know you, you deliver great products to people who need them and that's it. And you know that ahead of time, then don't go down. Oh, I need a social media channel and I need like, no, you don't. Just stop.
Yeah. Good point. All right. So for people who want to follow you and kind of learn more about kind of your frameworks and thoughts on these type of strategic business ownery, getting themselves out of the muck, where would they go?
Yeah, the best place is actually Instagram, and find us at Joel Bauer Official, JOELBOWER official. And that's where our latest stuff is. That's kind of like the stuff we're working on right now, and it's coming out of the programs that we're doing live for people. So that is probably the best place. Or you can also check us out on owningtheedge.com.
Awesome. We will have links to both of those. And so if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the description down below. And if you're listening to the audio podcast, it'll be in the show notes. So Joel, thank you for coming on. It's a good conversation. You got my mind thinking about a few things and what I can implement to be more owner and less operator.
Yeah,
Because we're all looking to do that at some point, I think.
absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joel.
Thank you.